Today we're going to be looking at how to compare fractions using benchmarks. When you're finished with this lesson, you should be able to use benchmarks to compare two different fractions and then record the comparison with the symbol less than or greater than. Let's look at Spark Your Learning. Abbott and Rowan go to the climb-a-thon. They both climb ropes that are the same length. Who climbs higher than halfway up the rope? Now, here's our information that we're going to be using, and we're comparing these two fractions to the halfway point. So the halfway is going to be our benchmark. Now, just because you may not be familiar with the word benchmark and how we're going to use it today, let's talk about just for a second the definition of benchmark. Benchmark is a known size or amount that helps you understand a different size or amount. Some common benchmarks that you might hear us use in this lesson are 0, 1/2, 1, and 1 1/2. So for this activity, we have to compare these two fractions to the halfway point. So to show our thinking, we're going to create visual models to compare these two fractions to the half. So first, we're going to draw a model that shows 1/2. Okay, we're going to break it into two equal parts, and then we're going to shade one of those parts. This shows 1/2. So this is our benchmark. Now we're going to use this benchmark to help us compare the other two fractions. So now let's build 5/8. So we're going to try to draw the same exact shape and size, but this time we're going to break it into 8 equal parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So let's make sure we have 8 equal parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we're going to shade in 5 of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we've shaded in 5 of those parts. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing with 4/10. Again, you want to try to draw the same size shape as the other two. Do the best that you can. And we're going to break it up this time into 10 equal parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, then we're going to shade in 4. And just try to be as equal as you can. We all make mistakes. Miss Jennifer does included. So just try the best that you can to make it as equal as possible. All right, now let's look at our benchmark. First, we have 1/2. So this is what we're using to compare 5/8 and 4/10. Now our question, our problem says, who climbs higher than halfway up the rope? Well, if we look at our problem, we can see that 5/8 is going past our halfway point. Okay, so that tells me that 5/8 is larger or higher than the halfway up the rope. So we're going to say that Abbott climbs higher than halfway up the rope. All right, let's continue with this strategy. We're going to go to the next page, page 272, and let's keep doing that. Let's compare these two fractions. Okay, let's look at build understanding. The owner of a yogurt shop brings 1-gallon buckets of yogurt to the climb-a-thon. At the end of the day, one bucket is 2/5 full, and a second bucket is 3/4 full. Which bucket is less than 1/2 full? What fractions do you need to compare to solve this problem? We need to compare 2/5 and 3/4 to 1/2. Okay? Use fraction strips to represent the three fractions. Draw your results. So we're comparing these two fractions to 1/2. So let's start with our benchmark, which is 1/2. So we're going to take it and make 2 equal parts and shade in one of those. Okay, so this is our benchmark. This is what we're comparing everything else to. Now we're going to do 2/5. Okay, so again, we're going to try to draw the same size rectangle. As perfect as you can. 5 equal parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to shade in 2. Okay, and then we're going to do 3/4. So we need 4 equal parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to shade in 3 of those. So now we have our visual model. We're using fraction strips. So we have our benchmark and we have our 2 fractions that we're comparing. So now let's answer the questions using our model. C, how do the numerator and denominator in 1/2 compare? So now let's go back and review. The numerator is the number on top. Denominator is the number on bottom. Let's try that again. So you have 1/2. So this is our numerator. This is our denominator, okay? So how do these numbers compare? Well, if we look at the number 1/2, or the fraction 1/2, we can see that the numerator is half as much as the denominator. So we can say the numerator is half as much as the denominator. All right, let's look at D. How do the numerator and denominator compare in the fraction that is less than 1/2? So we have our 2 fractions. We can see that 2/5 is less than 1/2. So how does the numerator and denominator compare in that fraction? Well, the numerator is less than half as much as the denominator. So half of 5 would be 2.5. So it's less than half. So we can say the numerator which is the top number, is less than half as the denominator. Okay, let's look at E. How do the numerator and denominator compare in the fraction that is greater than 1/2? So 3/4 is greater than 1/2. So how do those two numbers compare? This time the numerator is greater than half as the denominator. Okay. F. Which bucket is less than 1/2 full? How do you know? So which bucket is less than 1/2 full? We would say that that would be 2/5. How do we know? Well, we know because the numerator 2/5 is less than half as much. So we could say that 2/5 is less than 1/2. Okay, let's continue to practice this strategy with step it out. So let's go to page 273. Okay, compare 1 3/8 and 1 2/3. So here's our vocabulary. This is the vocabulary that I read to you earlier in the video. Benchmark is a known size or amount that helps you understand a different size or amount. And then they showed us some common benchmarks. So we're looking at comparing 1 3/8 to 1 2/3. So we need to find a benchmark to use to compare those numbers. Well, look at your common benchmarks that you have over here in the vocabulary box. We know they're not close to 0. They're not close to 1/2. They're actually more than 1, so they're going to be close to 1 1/2. So that's the benchmark that we're going to use. Okay, so that's how we're going to figure this out. So now we've got to be able to use less than or greater than. It says compare both numbers to the benchmark. Well, we could say that 1 3/8 is less than 1 1/2. We could also say that 1 2/3 is greater than 1 1/2. Use the comparison to the benchmark to compare the two numbers. So we're going to use less than, but let's use a visual model to justify our answer. So in this time, we can use whatever we want to use. Let's use a number line, okay? So we're going to draw it out. Now, we said we couldn't use 0, but we're still going to put it on our number line. This is going to kind of show us our benchmark. We have 2/8 here. Remember, we're working with the fraction 1 3/8. And we've got 4/8, 5/8, 6/8. And then this is going to be 1. And we have 1 2/8. So I may have to extend my line just a little bit more. Not a problem. So 1 2/8, 1 3/8. Extend it out a little bit longer. 1 4/8. We have 1 5/8. 1 6/8. I think maybe we can stop right there. Okay. So we're going to compare. So this is showing our fraction of 1 3/8. So we need to find that on our number line. Here is 1 3/8. Okay. So now we're going to do the same thing with the number line to show 1 2/3. Okay. So here's our number line again. And a little longer this time. We're going to start with 0. Now this time we're looking at a fraction with the thirds in it. So we're going to break that up and say 1/3, 2/3. We have 1, and it's 1 1/3, 1 2/3, and then we would go to 2. Okay? So now let's find 1 2/3 on our number line. Here's 1 2/3. Now we've got to think about where would 1 1/2 be? Well, 1 1/2 would be this line right about here. So that's 1 1/2. Okay, so now looking at our two number lines and where our numbers, our two fractions fall in the number line, which number is less than 1 2/3? And that would be 1 3/8. Okay, 1 3/8. Now, I want you to complete check understanding on your own. So you're going to pause the video and you're going to complete 1, 2, 3, and 4 on your own. Then you're going to turn the video back on to check your answers. Okay, so you should have had a chance by now to do check understanding, so let's look at this together. Number 1, a recipe for berry bliss yogurt calls for 5/4 pints of strawberries and 7/8 pints of raspberries. Which type of berry is there more of? So hopefully you used one of the strategies in the lesson. You could have used a number line, you could have drawn out the benchmark using the fraction strips, but when you did that, you should have found that there were more strawberries than raspberries. Okay, number 2, we're writing greater than or less than for the comparison. So for number 2, we're comparing 2/3 to 5/12. We know that that is greater. So 2/3 is greater than 5/12. For number 3, 13/10 and 8/5. So our answer here would be less than. 13/10 is less than 8/5. All right, number 4, you have 1 5/6, comparing that to 1 3/10. So the answer here would be greater than. Again, guys, as you're comparing the two fractions, we've given you several strategies that you can use. The fraction strips is a great way using benchmarks, and you can also use the number line. So make sure you practice using those strategies.